Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has set the date for an assault on Rafah. This despite international pressure on him not to carry out a major operation in Rafah, which has now become Hamas's last stronghold. Netanyahu has insisted that Israeli forces will enter the city. He has said, and I quote, "Victory requires entering Rafah and eliminating the terrorist battalions out there." With no progress in Gaza truce talks, Netanyahu is now determined to carry out a ground invasion of the southern city where so many displaced Palestinians are seeking shelter. Israel's Prime Minister says that he doesn't see an alternative to a ground attack on Gaza's southern city in a sign of widening disagreement with the United States. The United States has warned that such an offensive would be a red line. The White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said that the US believed that storming Rafah would be a mistake and that Israel could achieve its military aims by other means. The White House has also added that it will not support a Rafah operation without the Israelis presenting a credible plan to ensure the safety of Palestinian civilians. But just why Netanyahu is intent on bombarding Rafah? Well, Israeli officials have said that Rafah, located on the Egyptian border, is Hamas's last major stronghold in Gaza. An estimated 1.5 million Palestinians, over half of Gaza's population, have taken refuge in Rafah after they fled fighting elsewhere in the territory. So what is the significance of Rafah? According to the United Nations, more than 1.4 million people are currently in Rafah, which was once a city of 300,000 people. This is because Israeli forces attacked all other areas of the narrow Gaza Strip. Located just next to Egypt, Rafah was previously one of the last borders in the operation in the occupied Palestinian territories and the only way that the Palestinians could leave the Gaza Strip. The border remains tentatively closed, meaning most Palestinians cannot leave and most humanitarian aid cannot get in. Israel controls all sea and other land borders across the Palestinian territories. Rafah is now one of the last major cities in which Israeli forces are yet to enter as part of their 4-month operation to eradicate Hamas fighters. Currently, Rafah's border crossing helps the supply food chain and fuel to Gaza. Since Gaza borders the Mediterranean Sea to its west and Israel to its east, its population has no other functioning checkpoints to exit the region at the very moment. Now, in November 2023, a partial opening of the Rafah crossing was allowed. Now, that allowed critically injured people and foreign nationals to go to Egypt. In normal times, Rafah is primarily a civilian crossing for Palestinians needing to go to Egypt for medical care or personal reasons. But with all other borders closed since the conflict began, it has now become the only entry point for what little humanitarian aid has been allowed into the enclave. The crossing opens for the limited evacuation of foreign passport holders and some critically injured Palestinians who reportedly have nowhere else to go. And Israel has so far proposed no evacuation plan to help these families who are desperately trying to escape the conflict. The city has transformed into a big mass refugee camp with more than 1 million distressed people fleeing other parts of the Gaza Strip to try and seek refuge and shelter from the intense Israeli bombing. Shelling across Rafah has already turned many buildings into rubble, killing hundreds of Palestinians. Food and clean water remain scarce, prompting major concerns about a mounting regional humanitarian crisis. As Israel attacks of Gaza intensifies and the humanitarian situation only worsens, Rafah has now become the focal point both for relief efforts and for those who are hoping to leave the Gaza Strip. Getting aid in and people out has been extremely difficult. All eyes are now on Rafah, as the Israeli Prime Minister has vowed to press on with a ground offensive despite international condemnation of such a move. Netanyahu's latest assault plan comes after Hamas's recent defeat in several parts of the Gaza Strip. Now, this is particularly true in terms of Hamas's battalions, the organizational tactical level unit that it has used to control areas in Gaza. Of 24 Hamas battalions, it's believed that more than 18 have been defeated or completely decimated. However, according to Israeli authorities, Hamas still continues to rule in Rafah, the key area on the Egyptian border where now it controls humanitarian aid that enters Gaza. For Hamas, holding on to Rafah is the key because it needs to control humanitarian aid because this is how it will be able to control the people of Gaza. However, an assault by Israeli forces could have devastating repercussions for the Palestinians who are seeking refuge and also from the international community who are continuing to press Israel to avoid an offensive that could lead to more civilian casualties and further destruction.